She noticed it because of the silence. Not the kind of silence you expect in a quiet house, but the kind that feels unfamiliar even when nothing has changed. The clock still ticked, the refrigerator still hummed, but something felt missing. For a moment, she stood in the doorway, just looking around the living room, as if something had been moved, as if something wasn't where it was supposed to be. And then, slowly, she realized what it was. There was no message, no good morning, no small check-in, no soft, familiar presence waiting for her on the screen. And that's when it hit her, because for the first time in months, her phone was quiet. At first, it hadn't seemed like anything important. Just a message. That's all it was. A small notification on a Tuesday afternoon, while she was sitting at the kitchen table, going through bills she already knew she couldn't reduce. The message didn't come from someone she knew, but it wasn't strange either. It was simple. Hi. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem like someone kind. She almost ignored it. Almost. Her finger hovered over the screen for a second, and then she opened it. For a moment, she just read it again. Nothing special, nothing urgent, but something about the way it was written. Careful, a little hesitant. It didn't feel like a Sam. It felt like someone trying. And then, without thinking too much about it, she replied, "Hello. Do I know you?" He said his name was Daniel. Said he had come across her profile by accident. Said he almost didn't write. But something about her photo made him stop. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't need to. Because for a moment, she felt seen. And that feeling had been gone for a long time. Her days were usually the same. Wake up, coffee, sit by the window, watch people who seemed to have somewhere to go. She had once been part of that rhythm. Once. But now, things moved without her. The phone rarely rang. Messages were short. Practical. Are you okay? Did you pay that bill? Let me know if you need anything. No one really asked how she felt. No one stayed long enough to hear the answer. And then, suddenly, there was Daniel. At first, their conversations were light. Simple things. Weather, music, what she liked to cook. He asked questions, not rushed questions, not distracted ones, real ones, the kind that pause for answers. And then he would say, "Tell me more about that." And she did, without noticing how easily the words came. Days passed, then weeks. Their messages became longer, slower, more personal. He started telling her about his life. He said he worked overseas. Said his job kept him moving. Said he didn't have many people he could talk to. But something felt off. Not in a clear way. Not in a way she could point to. Just small things. Details that didn't always line up perfectly. But every time that thought appeared, he would say something that pulled her back. "You made me feel alive again." And she would pause, reading it more than once, letting it sit. Because no one had said that to her in years. For a moment, she hesitated to tell anyone. Not because she was hiding it, but because she didn't want it to be questioned. Didn't want someone to look at it too closely. To reduce it to something simple, because it didn't feel simple. It felt real. And then, slowly, things began to shift. He started sending voice messages, short ones, warm ones, sometimes just saying good morning, sometimes just saying her name, the way he said it. Song. Unhurried, it stayed with her long after the message ended. At first, she didn't send any back, but one evening, after reading something he wrote, she pressed the button and spoke. Her voice felt unfamiliar to her, like she hadn't used it that way in a long time. She stopped halfway through the first attempt, deleted it, tried again, and when she finally sent it, she sat there, waiting, not for a reply, but for a reaction. "You have a beautiful voice." That's what he said. Simple, direct, and for a moment, she just closed her eyes. And then, it became routine. Morning messages, midday check-ins, late-night conversations. She started adjusting her day around him, without realizing it, without deciding to. It just happened. One afternoon, he said something new. "I want to see you in real life." She read it once, then again, and then, slowly, she smiled, because for the first time, this didn't feel like just a connection. It felt like something that could exist outside the screen, but something felt off, just for a moment. A small hesitation, because every time she asked about meeting, there was always something, a delay, a complication, work issues, travel restrictions, unexpected problems, and each time he sounded frustrated, not distant, not avoidant, frustrated, as if he wanted it just as much as she did, and that made it easier to believe. "I think about you more than I should." That was the message that stayed with her. She read it late at night, the house quiet, the lights low, and for a moment, she didn't respond right away. She just sat there, holding the phone, letting the words settle. That's when everything changed. It didn't start with money. Not directly. It started with concern. He told her something had happened, a problem at work, something urgent, something unexpected. He didn't ask for help, not at first. He just explained, carefully, slowly, as if he didn't want to worry her. She asked questions. Of course she did, and he answered them, patiently, openly. Nothing felt rushed, nothing felt forced. And then, after a pause, "I didn't want to ask you this." That's how he began. "I'll understand if you say no." Her fingers hovered over the screen. First her mode cleanse. She didn't move, because this felt different. This felt like a line. "I just need a little help, just until things clear up." She leaned back in her chair, looked around the room, as if the answer might be somewhere outside of her. And then, slowly, she looked back at the phone. At first, she said no, softly, carefully, explaining that she wasn't in a position to help, that things were tight, that she had to be careful. He didn't push, didn't argue, didn't insist. He just said, "I understand." And then he changed the subject. That's what made it harder, because he didn't make her feel guilty. He made her feel respected. But something shifted after that, not in what he said, but in what she felt. A small weight, a quiet thought. What if I could help? Days passed. The conversations continued, but there was something underneath now, something unspoken. And then, one evening, she brought it up again, on her own, if I were to help.
How much would you need? There was a pause,
A longer one than usual.
and then he told her it wasn't a small amount.
Not something casual. Not something easy. For a moment.
She didn't respond. Her hands rested on the table,
Her breathing.
slower now, more noticeable. And then, slowly, she stood up.
Walked to the bedroom. Opened a drawer where she kept her documents. For a moment.
She didn't move. And then, slowly, she reached inside.
The next day,
She went to the bank. The line was longer than usual. Or maybe
it just felt that way. Her hands stayed close to her body. Her shoulders slightly tense.
she looked at the floor more than at the people around her. When it was her turn, she stepped forward,
Her voice quieter than usual.
but steady. And then, it was done. She walked out of the bank,
Holding nothing.
but feeling like she had just given something important. That night, he thanked her, not quickly,
Not casually.
deeply.
You don't know what this means to me.
She read that message more than once,
And each time, it felt like confirmation.
that she had done the right thing.
For a while,
Everything felt
closer, stronger.
more real.
He talked about their future,
About meeting,
about places they could go.
things they could do. She started imagining it,
Not in big ways.
in small ones, coffee, walks,
Quiet conversations.
and then he needed help again. This time, it came faster, less hesitation, more urgency. There's a delay, just a temporary issue. She didn't go to the drawer right away this time. She stayed at the table, phone in her hand.
For a moment.
She didn't reply. And then, slowly, she typed.
How much? And that's how it continued. Each time.
It felt like the last time.
Each time.
There was a reason.
Each time. There was a promise.
And then,
One night, something changed.
she was sitting in the same place. Same chair. Same table.
The room quiet.
She looked at his last message.
And for a moment,
She didn't open it.
because something felt off. Not loud.
Not obvious. Just different. And then, slowly, she tapped the screen.
Are you really who you say you are?
She didn't remember typing it, but there it was. Sent.
For a moment.
Nothing happened. And then, he replied.
A long message.
Careful, detailed, reassuring.
Explaining everything.
She read it once, then again.
And slowly.
She nodded,
Because it made sense. Because it sounded right.
because it felt like him. And that was enough, for a while, until the silence came back.
Not all at once.
Gradually,
Messages became shorter, less frequent.
excuses came quicker. And then,
One day, nothing.
she waited. Hours, then longer. Her phone stayed in her hand.
More than usual,
She checked it.
even when it hadn't made a sound. For a moment. She opened their conversation.
Scrolled up, rigging old messages, hearing his voice in her head. And then,
She noticed something.
a detail, small,
Almost nothing.
but it didn't match. She went back further. Another detail, and then another. Her breathing changed, just slightly. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She sat up straighter, and for the first time,
she didn't feel comfort reading his words.
She felt distance. She tried calling. No answer. Again.
Nothing.
And then she stopped.
For some moment,
she just sat there.
The room exactly the same, but something had shifted. Something permanent.
Her hands rested on the table, but they weren't still.
Her fingers pressed into the wood, her shoulders slightly raised.
And then, slowly, she leaned forward, her breathing uneven now.
And that's when it fully arrived.
Not as a thought,
but as a realization.
There was no Daniel. There had never been.
Everything she had felt,
every moment she had trusted, every image she had built in her mind was gone. Not taken. Gone.
For a moment,
she didn't move. And then her hand reached for the phone again,
scrolling,
searching,
as if something might still be there.
But there wasn't.
Only messages, only words, only something that had once felt real.
And now felt empty.
The days after that were quiet.
Not peaceful, just quiet.
She didn't tell anyone right away.
Not because she didn't want help, but because she didn't know how to explain it.
How do you explain something that felt real,
but wasn't?
How do you describe a connection that never existed?
She went back to her routine.
Same place,
same chair, same window.
But now,
the silence was different, heavier.
Because now she knew what had filled it before.
And what it had cost her. Not just money.
Something else. Something harder to measure.
Something she couldn't get back.
For a moment,
she picked up her phone again.
Not to check messages.
Just to hold it. And then, slowly, she set it down.
If you think this could never happen to you, this is exactly how it begins.
It doesn't start with money.
It starts with a message.
A small one. Soft. Careful.
And easy to believe. And by the time it feels real, it already is. Just not in the way you think. And the silence, when it comes back, never feels the same again.